Welcome to Building Wealth Through Real Estate, the ultimate interview style podcast for real estate investors. Learn from our experienced guests as they share their successes and their failures and uncover new strategies to grow your wealth. With a focus on Canadian real estate, we cut through the noise and bring you relevant information that you can act on. So don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with like-minded investors and elevate your game. Leave your questions in the comments below and join us on a journey to building wealth through real estate. Joining us today is Mrs. Annette Purcell. Annette, could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your family, and how you got started in real estate?
So I grew up in the province of Newfoundland. I've had about every job you can think of. I've been a vet office assistant, waitress. I worked for Canada Revenue Agency. I sold crafts on Etsy. I was a photographer for a while. And about a decade ago, I moved to Fort McMurray, Alberta to become a grade 6 French immersion teacher. And there I met my husband, and we have 3 boys. They are 6, 4, and 6 months old. And currently, just this past summer, actually, we moved to St. Albert, which is just north of Edmonton. And we are investing. So yeah, we started investing about 2 years ago, and we have some buy and holds. We've done the BRRRR strategy, and we're currently focusing on fix and flips.
Wow, that's quite the experience tied in there. Tell me, has your experience as a French immersion teacher and freelance photographer, has that influenced your approach to real estate investing at all? And if so, how?
I would say my photography has, because it's heavy on social media. So when I started investing in real estate, everyone's like really big on posting and telling the world about what you're doing. And so I post on social media quite a bit. It may be a hindrance sometimes, because sometimes I don't like to post things if it's like ugly, because my photography background, I like my feed to look really pretty. Yeah. So sometimes I'll just not post anything for a while because I'm not feeling inspired by my photos. So yeah, and I think with the photography as well, and with teaching, it just allowed. I'm pretty chatty, and so at networking events, I'm pretty laid back to talk to pretty much anyone.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, though. And by the way, with social media, I feel like you're pretty active. Honestly, I feel like you're really active.
Not too bad.
I know we always feel like we could do more, though. But,
that's right. Yeah, we're always harder on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. What are some challenges that you faced while investing with having kids, and how were you able to overcome them?
Oh, gosh. Okay. This is like right into the...
And the list goes on, right?
Into the money, like right away. Yeah, first of all, I have a 6-month-old. So that's a little challenging. When one of my biggest challenges right now are that we have 2 fix and flips on the go, and I would like to be physically there more often, to get social media content, to just be more part of it. But it's usually a 30-minute drive each way. And when you have a 6-month-old, they don't love the car seat. And then, I don't know, like it's just harder to bring a 6-month-old. Versus like my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old, like they're pretty good to come along, and they might help hammer some nails in, or they'll just be happy to like play video games while I'm doing what I need to do. But the 6 months, it's a little more challenging. I have worn him on my back and done some scraping of windows and things like that. That's my biggest challenge currently. Globally, I would say my biggest challenge is mentally just balancing spending enough time with my kids and also growing my business as I would like to. I really struggle with that when I feel like sometimes I'm really in the flow with my real estate and I'm doing all these cool things, but then in the back of my mind, I'm always like, am I spending enough time with my kids? Am I affecting their childhood by not being present enough? My own mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she was like baking the cookies and fresh baked muffins when we got home from school. And so I try to do that, but then also I'm putting on my heels and going to networking events. So it is a challenge mentally, for sure. Is the biggest challenge there.
I think that's a big thing with parents, at least good parents, is that constant internal struggle of these are goals that I want to pursue for myself and more so for my family. But then, am I spending enough time with my family? Because as kids, all that they want is time. They want the time, right? They don't see that value. But you're trying to build something for the future as well and walk that fine line. So I think that's a question or internal debate that most good parents struggle with, I think. Yeah. Now, you said you started with your investment strategy. You started more on the burr side and the rental properties, and you sort of evolved over into fix and flips. What was your decision based on which strategy to pursue at which time?
So it's a little bit of a timeline. Like about 2 years ago, we purchased our second rental property. We had one, which was a condo that we used to live in. So it was like an accidental rental. But then when we decided to intentionally get rental properties, we purchased one outright. So we just used our savings as the down payment. And then our second property, we actually house hacked. So we put the 5% down and we lived in that house for a year. And then after that is when we got into the real estate community and discovered all the different creative strategies. And then by that point, we had tapped out most of our savings. And so we ended up we did the burr strategy on 2 townhouses in Edmonton. And we picked townhouses because they were a low cost to get into, less risk because it's, lower money. And so that's why we picked those. And currently we're fix and flipping. And again, it's mostly because we tapped out all of our savings. And so we're like, okay, we do want a couple more buy and holds in our portfolio. But for now, we're going to focus on fix and flips and try to just get some more capital for that. And we also really enjoy the fix and flips. My husband does a lot of the work on them and we enjoy the process. So yeah. So I would say that even once we get enough capital for the buy and holds that we want, we'll still continue fix and flipping. At least 1 or 2 at a time, I would say. That's our goal.
That progression makes a lot of sense. And I think everyone gets to certain sticking points throughout their real estate investing journey, right? Running out of capital, running out of mortgages, and you have to find ways around it, right? And pivot with regards to your approach, your strategies, or finding other people that you can partner up with. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, seeing as this whole episode is also just about highlighting what moms and women out there can do in the real estate investing industry, and a mom of 3 nonetheless, can you just touch on a success story on just one of your real estate projects?
Oh, okay. I guess I'll touch on the townhouses that we burred. Yeah. It was a very challenging time in our family. We were living in Fort McMurray at the time. And so at that point we had 3 rental properties in Fort McMurray. But Fort McMurray, what's the word? Like the housing market is not as stable as Edmonton. Okay. And so that's why we decided that we were going to start investing in Edmonton. So my husband works in the oil sands and he works 7 days straight and they're 12-hour shifts. So at that time, when we decided that we were going to start investing in Edmonton, he would work his 7 days in Fort McMurray. And I was teaching at the time. And our 2 boys were in daycare. And Brad, my husband, would actually, on his days off, he would go to Edmonton and stay at these townhouses and renovate them. And so and then I became pregnant at that time as well. So I was pregnant, working full time, and 2 kids in daycare, and pretty much single parent for about 5 months. And anyway, it was enough to almost make us want to throw in the towel. Like many times we were like, oh, like we should just quit this and just stay at our jobs and then watch Netflix in the evenings and chill on the weekends. Like, why are we putting ourselves through this? Like, why are we tapping into all of our savings and not spending any time together? But we persisted because we knew like we had a global plan, and we did, and we persisted through it, and we successfully burred 2 townhouses. Like they were almost perfect burrs, and we got those tenanted, and we have great tenants so far in those. And yeah, I feel like really proud of us for having got through that really challenging time. And
oh, absolutely. So much of what you said resonated with me because yeah, that is so tough, just trying to wrap my head around the fact you being alone with 2 kids. And I know when I leave my wife to handle our 2 kids, it can be tough on her. And then it's also mentally tough on me as well, because you want to be there as a parent as well. And then with regards to your partner, is not seeing each other for that extended time periods. Yeah, I like the fact that we highlight this as well, is that it's not just all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to investing. There's a lot of challenges, but it definitely can be worth it if you know why you're doing it and you moving in the right direction. And then just for people listening out there who don't know what a perfect BRRRR is, it's essentially where you're able to recoup all the money that you've put into a deal. So basically get into the deal for nothing down. So the fact that you guys were able to add 2 properties to your rental portfolio for almost nothing down is super impressive, and that's just gonna compound over the long term. So it's that short-term sacrifice. Absolutely. An incredible sacrifice, but that short-term sacrifice to really help you in the long run. So thank you for highlighting the struggle behind that, because I feel like that's important to set people's expectations, right? Sure. There's definitely a struggle. It's so much easier to Netflix and chill, right? It's really, like we spend so much time looking after the kids, and now we can get some downtime.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like even now, it's like it continues to be, it's always a balance when both of us are in the real estate, and we almost only talk about real estate now. And so sometimes I need to stop and be like, okay, like we should probably talk about our family or something else besides business. Yeah, it can be a real like passion killer.
I definitely get that. But you know what I do think on the flip side is the fact that both of you guys are into this. I think that also just solidifies your relationship a whole lot more, because you're both on board, you're both on the same wavelength. It's not like one person speaking a foreign language or one person's really into real estate investing and the other person's not into it at all. So you guys are building something together. And then I think when those hard times do come up where you guys have to sacrifice for an extended period of time, both partners can understand the why behind it all.
Absolutely.
And I think that just makes your relationship a whole lot stronger. So I think it's awesome that you guys are able to do this together and lean on each other and have that shared vision on where you're going. Now, tell me, what advice would you have for new moms who are interested in getting started in real estate investing and they're not even sure, can I do this? How do I do this? Should I do this? Do you have any advice to help them along getting started and making the journey just a little bit easier?
For sure. I would say probably try to get enough sleep, but I definitely don't do that. I definitely stay up too late all of the time. So if you're able to get enough sleep, that would probably be the number one key. But no, the real number one, I would say, is to have a network. We have real estate mentors, and I'm also part of a ladies mastermind that we meet every 2 weeks. And that is incredible. We have a group chat, and I just feel like having the community, pretty much all of my social media now are real estate investors. I have other people, but the main people that show up are real estate investors. So it's constantly reminding me of why I want to be doing this. And that's the other thing, is you should have a good why. And my good why is I want to provide a different life for my kids. I want them to see a different way that they could live, that it's not necessarily that you need to go to university and get a job, that you can be an entrepreneur and you don't have to go to a physical office 9 to 5. I just want them to see that there's a different way to go. And so that's my big why. And that's pretty much my biggest motivation for pursuing this. And so I guess have a why and have a network, a really good network. And the male network is great. The males, I find, not to be gender stereotypical here, but usually it's the males are the ones that are more the face forward in the real estate, I find. And so I like that. I like having good relationships with those types of people, because that empowers me to push myself more. But I also really like having the female community, because they understand the different challenges that a mother has. It's just usually different for the mom. I like having the males that will they really like following some of the really go-getters, the single guys in their 20s. When I start in my own head, I'm I'm going to compete with them. It really makes me want to do more, which is awesome. But then I have the females to also remind me, Annette, you should probably go to bed at 11 p.m. and not grind too hard. So it's a balance. A good network.
Honestly, that's great advice. And you 100%, like, firstly, that's why I'm so happy that I got to interview or get to interview on my podcast is I have a real influx of guys being most of the guests that I have. And I like the fact that we can highlight that ladies can do this. And if you can have ladies within your network that are investors as well, I think that's a real big bonus because they understand the context behind what it takes to be a real estate investor, but they also have the unique perspective of being a lady and the challenges that you go through that aren't the same as being a guy, right? Mm-hmm. Being a mother isn't the same as being a father. So understanding your perspective that men in the real estate investing industry may not understand and helping you on the self-care side of things as well is, I think, really important. So I think that is solid advice. Yeah. And then trying to compete with the young hustlers is a good way to keep your foot on the gas so that you have that good balance. So I think that was perfectly articulated. That is great advice. Now tell me, if we were to try and switch it up and someone's already an investor, but they're a seasoned investor who's new into motherhood, what advice would you have for them trying to juggle both sides of this now? Would that advice change at all? Of course, they probably have the network of investors, but they're worried about juggling being a new mom and keeping their foot on the gas.
Yeah, so some of the things that I have done since having a new baby again, I had a house cleaner that came every 2 weeks. So basically, since my third son was born, like, I have not cleaned the bathroom. And if it gets disgusting, I just leave it until the cleaner comes. And I also really maximize nap time. And sometimes that means my older boys are watching a movie while my baby is napping, and then I'm getting my work done. That's probably my biggest thing. And I guess I don't really cook as much as I used to. And I do want to get back into that as my kids get older, but the kids don't really care about home cooked meals that much anyway. So I'm just not going to push it right now. And I have my goal, like, I have the real estate things that I want to do, and I know that I have to let some things go. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And it's definitely not perfect. And I wish my kids watched a little bit less TV sometimes, but that's the current reality that I'm in. And that's what I'm working with. I also get my exercise I bought one of those like cool ass chariots, and that's how I get my exercise, by pushing my kids in those. And that's like good for my mental health. So that's how I balance things right now. Yeah.
That is solid advice, because as you start adding things onto your plate, you need to start taking things off. There's no way to do everything that you want to do, right? Or else you just do nothing effectively. So being able to delegate tasks like cleaning and even cooking, and even if it's for the short term until you have some more time that you can buy back and go back to those things that you perhaps a little more passionate about. And then seeing how you can structure your day so that you can be a little more efficient at getting things done. So that's coupling exercise with time with the kids, or trying to align things so that you can schedule some more free time. And I don't think you have to feel too bad. Of course, my opinion doesn't really matter, but I don't really think you have to feel too bad about screen time, because I feel like you balancing that out with showing your kids a whole new world to invest in and taking them out there. So it's not like they're sitting in front of the screens 24/7.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing that I didn't even mention, is that we actually bring our kids to most of the networking events. And one thing that I do need to work on is, like, once my baby hits a year old, like, we're definitely planning to get some childcare. But so I'm not great at the childcare right now. I don't really hire babysitters that much, but I probably should. But we actually just bring our kids along to the networking events. And so we turn it into a little family event. And I usually have a baby strapped to me when I'm meeting new people. And that's how life is right now. So that is one other thing that we do.
Exactly. And to be honest, I was trying to say that for later on in the episode. But like when I ran into you by one of the other networking events that we saw each other at, was my thing was my wife wasn't coming because she has to watch the baby, and she doesn't want us to walk around with the baby in the car seat. And then I rock up and Annette's there, she just rocking it with the baby. And I'm like, see, this is where you see all of these internal excuses, because it's not an excuse. Yeah. You can come to a networking event with the baby and no one will care. In fact, people will be attracted to you, and you'll just network with even more people because they want to see the baby. I love that. I love the fact that you bring them over.
For sure. And I'm usually, like, my husband still works in Fort Mac half the time, so I'm often even there solo with the 3 kids, and I still do it. And my baby has actually been coming to networking events. I think he went to his first flip open house when he was a week old. So I think of him as like our little real estate investing mascot right now, because he's been like at all the events, and all of our network has been seeing him grow up, and people are like offering to hold him for me. And I just, my thing is when he's old, I just picture everyone saying, if he decides to be a real estate investor as well, that they can literally say that he's been real estate investing since he's in diapers, and he's been in it like his whole life. And I think about that. I'm like, oh, people are going to say this about him, and it's going to be really cool.
I was also just thinking is the kid can't even talk yet, but he's got such a big network, right? No, I think I think that's great that you're just exposing them to that regardless, whether they decide to be investors when they're older or not. And one other thing that came to mind was grads away working oftentimes. So I just think a lot of people would feel like, hey, I'm a single parent right now with my kids. I can't go out to this networking event. So I just have to stay at home. I'll push this later on, maybe when the kids are older and they're out the house or whatever, and they can look after themselves kind of thing. But that's not an excuse for you, right? You're still making a way to make that work. So it just shows people out there, you do have permission. For most of the informal networking events, at least. Like, obviously, maybe if it's black tie, maybe you don't. But for the most part, you have permission to take your kids.
Yeah.
How do you make sure to take care of yourself while being a mom and a real estate investor? Because I feel like it's easy to let one aspect of your life slip away, and self-care is an important one. How do you make sure to try and find time to prioritize that as well?
I'm not great at it, El Ray. I'm really not great at self-care, but I'm trying to get better. I've been trying. Someone told me this before, that when you're an adult, sometimes you need to parent yourself and put yourself to bed. I'm really bad at staying up too late. So I've been trying to parent myself and put myself to bed earlier so that I'm more refreshed in the morning and not so tired, and can be like a better mom to my kids and a better like all around. And the other thing I've done recently is I've challenged myself to do 10 push-ups a day, which seems like nothing, but I just like was really stuck in this narrative that I never work out and I never stick with a workout routine. And then how can I work out? Because my baby, like, he might only have a 10-minute nap and then he wakes up again. So I basically told myself that every morning I'm going to take my son and I'm going to change his diaper, and then I'm going to get on the floor and do 10 push-ups. And I feel like super accomplished after I do that. And so even though it's like maybe not changing like my fitness, it's changing my mindset like right away for the day that I accomplished something. So that's one like small thing that I'm doing. And the other thing is I really try to get outdoors every day, and that really helps me. And again, just having the community, like friends that I see in person, but then also like my kind of virtual network of people that I don't see in person as often.
That's solid advice for people, because I feel like we always think like I either have to have the perfect workout and be doing that, or I don't have time to do that workout. So then you just don't do it, right? Yeah. But if you find that middle ground of let's just do something small, but doing something small consistently over time gives you way better results than doing one great workout for a week and then stopping, or for a month. So absolutely, even though you may not think there's results, there could be small results that are just adding up with just those 10 push-ups. And besides the physical aspect, like you say, there's a mental aspect behind it as well, accomplishing something and doing something and having that feeling of I've actually done what I said I'm going to do, versus I know deep down that I'm making an excuse on why I didn't do something that I said I was going to do. So having that inner integrity where your voice actually means something to you. If I say I'm going to do something, I know I'm going to do it. I love that. I saw that on your social media and I'm like, that is awesome. You should just start small and start now, versus just making up an excuse to start in the future.
For sure.
Can you touch on your experience with house hacking? I'm eager to hear how that went, especially as a family, right? Now, there's different scales to house hacking. You can house hack by the room, where you live in one room and rent out the other rooms. Here in Canada, you can house hack with the basement suite, right? Which is a little easier with a family. So there's like different levels of house hacking. But I think having a family limits the amount of house hacking you can do on a comfortable level. So I'm just interested in hearing how that went.
So the first house that we lived in, Fort McMurray, we actually did rent out one room. That's when my first son was small. It was just for 4 or 5 months, I think. I didn't love it, really. It was someone that we knew, and there was nothing wrong with having her in the house, but just with having a little baby at home. So we tried it out, but definitely like we weren't interested in doing that again, like having someone rent a room. So then we decided to downsize. So we lived in a bigger house, that house, and then we decided to sell it. And then we bought a little bit of a smaller house in Fort McMurray, and it's in an area that is really, it makes really easy access to the oil sands. So it's a really popular area for families to live when one person works in the oil sands, because they can just hop on the highway. So it's a really good family neighborhood and close to the oil sands. So we decided to buy a house there, and it had an unfinished basement that could be converted into a suite. So we purchased that house and moved into it, and we knew that we were only going to live in it for a short period of time. We weren't exactly sure. We figured a year or two. We ended up staying there 1 year, and during that time we finished the basement suite while we were living in it. We put the 5% down and moved in and finished the basement suite. And then after the year, we decided to move to St. Albert, and then that whole house is rented now. So it was a good way to get a rental property for 5% down, and we were able to build the basement suite while we were living in it. So that all worked out pretty good. And we didn't actually have basement tenants until after we moved out, which was nice as well, because when you have 2 young kids, it's not great to have basement tenants.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
That worked out great, yeah, because you didn't need to have as much money down. You could space out your renovations to when you could do them versus being in a rush. The house is sitting vacant. We need to get this sorted, or
For sure.
so it was your primary residence. So I think that's a super smart play that for people to get into as a way to get in with limited capital. What has been the most valuable lesson that you've learned as a mom and a real estate investor? If you could pick one, what would you say that would be?
Oh gosh. I would say it's probably more focused on the relationship with my husband, us being in it together as parents. It's just to have more like understanding and care for each other. That's probably the biggest growth that we've both had over the past 2 years. It was a real struggle at the beginning because we were both working full-time jobs and trying to really grind, and it was like really felt like a grind at that time, and we really were getting at odds with each other. And again, like we weren't seeing each other that much. And then over time we just started to hash things out a little bit more and realized we're partners in this together. Like we're not adversaries, we're not against each other, we're partners, so let's like start to work together. And that's been the biggest lesson for me, for sure, is like just showing more kindness to him and realizing that we're both in like a challenging situation sometimes, but we're in this together, and we need to like work as partners, like married partners and business partners.
I love that. Annette, I think it's so easy for us to see the challenges that we currently face in and shut ourselves off to the challenges that our partners are facing. On Brad's side, it's like I'm doing a whole lot of work and I'm coming home, and on your side it's like I have all the kids and I have work and all this stuff, and it's so easy to shut off on the other person's struggles. And I definitely agree, is if we can open ourselves up to our partner's struggles and have some compassion for that, it just strengthens the relationship. Now, while you're speaking about all of this, I'm thinking about couples out there where maybe one partner's interested in this real estate investing game and bettering their finances, but maybe the other partner's not on board. Or maybe they're both, but maybe the one's more interested and the other one's like, nah, it's okay. You guys have, and it seems like you guys have like this succinct passion and drive to do it together. It's not like, I don't get like that one of you's more into real estate investing than the other one. You guys are just like this real estate investing power couple. Do you have any advice for people out there, like to get their partner or their spouse on board so that they can tackle it as a team? Your first point was spot on, and I think that was really solid. And I think that's the foundation just of a good relationship for in general, whether it's business or just your personal relationship.
Yeah.
But converting them over, anything on that?
I think it's really common, actually. A lot of people that I know, one person is more into it than the other person. And I've had several people say to me, like, you and Brad are just so into it together. You look like such like a perfect couple in this. And I'm like, oh, no one knows what really happens sometimes. But no, we even had our struggles at the beginning as well, finding our roles in the business together. So sometimes we were like both trying to do the same thing and really just finding like our strengths. So we have slowly found our strengths. Like I'm more sociable than he is. Like I'm more into the networking and he's really like good at building the scope of work and managing projects and things like that and like crunching numbers. That's more of his strength. So it took us a long time actually to come to like our like individual roles. As for one person not being into it as much, I think that the person who is into it just needs to continue on without being too naggy. That's not really a word, but without nagging too much about it. Just kind of like, it sucks. It's not fun to do it alone. And then if the other person's not into it, but basically just continue on your path, do your thing. And then eventually they will probably see how much success you're having and the cool community that you're in, and they'll probably start to get into it. And we have some people like in our extended families that they don't really understand what we're doing, and I think that they won't really understand until they've seen us be successful over a long period of time. Yeah. Then I think that they'll take us more seriously. So it's probably going to be a little bit like that as well. If your partner is not on board, like they might not actually get on board until they've seen you be successful. And then you might hold a little bit of resentment because you're like, you weren't there for me when I was struggling, but now you're here. But that's just, again, the kindness piece. And if you want to be with your partner, then you need to accept where they're at. And yeah.
I think that's solid advice. And I was actually, follow-up question on that. Who between the two of you was the first one to get into real estate investing? Who converted the other? Did you guys just get into it together one day, babe, let's just start investing in real estate kind of thing and let's do it?
It's pretty funny. So Brad is the one who has always been interested in real estate. He owned a rental property in BC before. So he always was the one who wanted to invest in real estate. And going back to, I was a photographer, so I was running a photography business on the side. And so I was the one who was always the more entrepreneurial one. And he was the one who always spoke about real estate investing. And so I was a photographer, but it was taking me away from the family a lot. So basically I was finding that like I was on Saturdays, like I was gone all day. And then in the evenings I was on my computer alone editing. So Brad was with the kids and I was doing my own thing. And so eventually that wasn't working for us. So I kind of tapered off my photography. And then again, like I'm the more entrepreneurial one. So I'm always like, what can I be doing? What side income can I get going here? And then Brad was interested in real estate investing. So I was like, okay, this is something that we're like, I wasn't really into it, but I was like, I can be. And so I started researching real estate investing podcasts, and then it took off from there. So basically, Brad was the one who was originally interested, but I was definitely the one that was pushing it at the beginning and like finding all the people. And I signed us up for a cabin retreat and things like that. So it was both of us worked. It worked like that.
I love it. And how, now that you guys have gone this far into your journey, you guys are really busy, right? How do you plan your life as a real estate investor around your family's sort of their needs, their schedules, that sort of thing? How do you find that flow of time planning it all?
We're still finding our flow, honestly. Yeah, it is still a challenge, to be honest. I don't even know if we found a flow yet. Basically, like for example, last night Brad got home, so he flies in on Wednesday evenings, and he wanted to go, so he's working on a townhouse flip right now. He's like physically doing it himself, and he wanted to get up right away this morning and get to work. And I understand, because I want to get the job done as well. But our kids were like really been missing him, so he actually decided to stay home for most of today. And that's just one small thing. Even though it's delaying our project a little bit, we just decided together that it was important for him to spend like today with the family. We all sat around and had breakfast together this morning and things like that. And in terms of like the kids' activities, like that's all on me, because Brad is away half the time, so I'm the one kind of managing all that. And I just drag all the kids with me, and away we go. And luckily we're starting to meet more people in our community now, like through my son's school. So last week my son was at judo, and one of his classmates' parents actually helped watch my 4-year-old for me. So I guess like building that community helps it a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just builds in more of a network anyway. No, and Annette, I love the fact that you are super open about this, because I think even people that are really well established, no one has that perfect life, and it constantly comes with different compromises.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that fact that you're constantly going to have to compromise between the two and just go with it, roll with it, and try and do the best that you can.
Yeah.
Now, for people who are trying to keep themselves organized, managing real estate investments and family life simultaneously, are there any strategies that you use to try and maximize your time and be as efficient in real estate investing? Now, you touched on a few. You mentioned trying to align baby's nap up with having your other two sons watch some TV, squeeze some work in that way. Do you have any other strategies that you use to try and stay on top of being organized with everything? Because managing a flip, you have to be proactive with it all, to try and fit everything within your timeline that you want and that sort of thing. Any advice there?
What I've found that I've been doing is really, I'll call it like brain blocking. So if I'm like into something, I'm like, okay, I had to order lights for both of our flips the other day. So I gave myself 20 minutes and I just went on Amazon and I was like, okay, I'm not thinking about anything else right now. And I think Brad called me during that time and he was talking about some repair that had to be done somewhere. And I was like, no, I can't talk about that right now. Hang up. I was like, I got to get my lights done. So it was like, and I like got my lights ordered and now they're in a pile in my garage. And then the other thing that I'm responsible for is like our accounting. So basically, every couple days, I'll just like, again, sit myself down and I'll go through our email and I have a bookkeeping spreadsheet. This is new because last year my taxes were a complete like disaster and it took me 2 weeks to organize it. So this year I'm like, no, that's not happening. I'm going to sit down every couple days. And again, sometimes I have the baby on my lap and I'm just like going through my email and like logging the charges and putting them in folders. And yeah, so basically I don't really have a schedule, but if I find like a small window of time where my kids don't need me, I'm sitting down and I'm going to work for 10 minutes and getting one thing accomplished.
Being intentional about your time, that's what it comes down to, right? So that you can get things done, or else the day just gets away with you. And I think as a parent, it's a little harder to try and time block things, because having kids, they don't work on your time, so you have to work around their time. Yeah, you just have to be intentional with the time that you do have and make the most of it. And that's great advice, is just blocking out that time that you have available to dial in and focus on getting a specific thing done, instead of trying to multitask, do a whole lot of things at once and not really get anywhere with anything. That's so right, that's solid advice. Can you talk about a time when you had to pivot your investment strategy just due to changes in your family's needs or circumstances?
Yeah, last year our goal was actually 2022, our goal was to do the BRRRR strategy on 7 townhouses. That was our goal. We actually did it on 2. Basically, I had a whole schedule planned out last like December of 2021. I was like, okay, if you know about the BRRRR strategy, it's, oh God, I'm going to butcher it now. But basically, you repeat and reuse your money and do the strategy over and over again. So I had my thing. I was like, we'll start this one in January, and then we'll start another one in March, and then the first one will wrap up, and then get another. And then I had 7. That was my goal. But then we found out that we wouldn't actually get approved for that many mortgages. And then the refinance process actually takes way longer than you expect. Like the banks want so much right now for like mortgage documentation. For one of them, I think it was 2 months for sure. And then our second townhouse, actually, we had a leak as the appraiser was supposed to come. There was a leak from the bathtub into the kitchen. So we had to put a pause on our refinance and get all that repaired and then continue the refinance. So again, like I think the whole refinance process took almost 3 months. So basically, instead of getting 7, we actually only got 2 BRRRRs done. And that's when we decided to go into flips, because you mentioned this earlier and I had forgotten to mention it. It's that we actually also ran out of mortgage space, because in 1 year, we had gotten like 4 or 5 mortgages, and then the banks are like, no way. Yeah. So now we're doing flips for a while.
Yeah. Everyone will eventually get to that spot where they just kind of tap out. Going forward, just out of interest, like going forward, are you guys considering continuing the flips again and perhaps just joint venturing and having other people hold the mortgages for you? And what was the choice between, or why the choice for flip versus just getting joint venture partners to hold it for you?
Yeah, this is something that we personally need to work on, but we didn't love the idea of partnering on a rental property. I like to just be in control of the rental property. And I guess if it was if they were a solely money partner and I could control everything, then I would probably go for it. But I don't know, we just wanted to try out flips anyway. So we're like, oh, we'll just do some flips for a while. And we're actually partnering on flip projects. And we like the idea of partnering on flip projects a little bit more because it's short term. So you're not tied with someone for 10 years, 5 or 10 years. So yeah, one of our flips right now we're partnered on, and we're actually currently with another set of partners looking for another flip. And we really like that idea. But in terms of rentals, that might be like a mindset thing that we need to work on, that it's not a bad thing to partner on rental properties. But currently, like, we were just wanting just to get the rental properties like for ourselves and just manage them all on our own. Yeah.
I think that's a very valid concern because you're right. It's a long-term commitment, and it's less the property that you're committed to, but more the partner. And that's the more important factor to consider between the two there, because it's a long-term relationship. So I think it's a smart play. I was just interested in learning why. I don't think like that's for everybody. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
And flipping is fun. Flipping is fun, right? So all this being said, what is your ultimate goal as a real estate investor, and how do you plan on achieving it while being a super mom and balancing your family life?
I guess the ultimate goal, like the big global goal, is to have like an enterprise to not hand over to our kids, but just for them to be part of something big. And I want my kids to be like super proud of their parents and super proud of what they came from. And so that's like the big goal, is for our kids to grow up and see this whole new world, something that Brad or I, like, we didn't grow up that way. So that's the big goal. And then like the financial goal is we would like to become private lenders eventually. I like having the rental properties, but no one like loves really being a landlord. I don't think. It's not. It's okay, but yeah, eventually we would like to be private lenders. I think that's like the retirement plan, because you're a bit more hands off. Yeah. And then I think also like the flips, like streamlining the flipping a little bit more as well. So we're like a little more hands off, because right now we are pretty hands on. Like, we'd like to streamline our flips a little bit, and then long term we would like to be private lenders. And you can probably explain what private lenders are if you want to, or...
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. So yeah, essentially you guys are building some wealth with your mortgage pay down on the rental properties that you have. You are increasing your current income by flipping. So that's an active strategy. And of course, it's not something you can continue to do yourself physically, like forever. But that's a great way of increasing your income. So essentially you guys are building up your income, building up your wealth, building up your capital. And then long term is you want to be a private lender where you help other investors finance their projects, and you don't have to worry about managing tenants, dealing with repairs and all that stuff, furnaces going out, any of those things. And then it's more just qualifying the investors that are coming to lend money from you, qualifying the properties that they're interested in, and making your money work harder for you than you work for your money, essentially. I think that is a super smart strategy. And I think even if you guys had hit pause and stop today on where you're currently at, I think you've already achieved the goal with regards to your familial side for your kids. As I think up until this point already, I don't think they have any reason not to be proud of what their parents have achieved so far. Goal one, check. It's just the other one, right? Now it's time for one of my favorite segments of the show that I recently implemented. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but it's called Time Capsule.
Okay.
So Annette, let's imagine that you've stumbled across a time machine that allows you to travel back and forth in time. You can't change anything, but you can give and receive advice from your younger or older self. Now first, let's go back to when you were 18. What advice would you give your younger self with the knowledge that you now have? Now this can be within business, investing, This can be familial or personal life in general, or even just a combination of them all.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh God, 18-year-old, many things. Spend less time on George Street in St. John's, first of all. If anyone knows what that is, it's a small street of, I don't know, a bunch of bars. No, for real though, spend less money on stupid things is probably the number one thing I would tell myself at 18. And to save for like your first property like earlier. That's the number one thing. Like when I think back, I'm like, oh my God, like I wasted so much money. And if I would have purchased a property or convinced my parents to purchase a property in my university town, for example, it'd be paid off by now almost, or like pretty close. So that's definitely the number one thing.
Ooh, that just hits home. I'm like, yeah, when you're younger, you spend a lot of money on trying to have nice things to impress other people and spend a lot of time and money going out and doing things. Yeah. And now when you're older, you're like, I don't need to impress people. Yeah. Or hopefully you get to that stage at least. And I don't need to go out and do all these things. And if only I'd saved that money, like the stuff I could have done with it now, insane. Yeah, I think anybody or most people can honestly relate to that. Yeah. That's solid advice. Now let's jump ahead to your 80th birthday. What advice do you think your future self would give your current self?
Oh gosh, it will definitely be like slow down and spend more time with your kids. And then I'm still not going to take that advice though, even though I know it. I know as I'm doing this now, like I know when I'm older, I'm definitely going to think back to the time when my baby was 6 months old and I was so damn busy all the time. But at the same time, I don't know. I think I'll still be proud of what we've done. But yeah, that's definitely the advice I would give my 8-year-old self to tell myself now.
Yeah, and that's tough advice to try and take because time flies by with kids, right? Just the first year, it's insane the amount of growth that they go to and how quickly those windows close and they move on to the next phase. But that being said, what you guys are doing now is buying future time back for yourself so that you can leverage your money and other people's time so that you guys can have more time. It's a tough one. It really is a tough one. It's tough advice to take, even knowing the advice right now. It's tough advice to take because it's a give and take, right, on future time or current time that you're going to be sacrificing. Yeah.
And I think that's why we take the little pockets like this morning, Brad not going to work on the flip. It's okay. Yeah, like you do need to spend some time with your kids and you need to have quality time with your kids. Even though I want to grind and grow and everything like that, we do always know that the time with our kids are the most important. And I think if it came down to it and if we really saw that our kids were like really being negatively affected, like we would just quit everything. But as of right now, I think that we're all doing okay. And so we're going to persist.
I think so too. And it's a really fine line to walk and try and balance out. And you never truly have balance, but it's trying to just counterbalance each time. When you skew a little to the one side is bring it back. And I think all that you guys are doing it's not negatively impacting your kids. In fact, you are exposing your kids to a whole new world. Yeah. And you are educating them on the financial side of things, which is education that they can't get from just going to school, just living the life of a normal kid. So you are changing their lives for the better. I think you guys should keep doing what you're doing. They are going to be like master black belt investors by the time they are old enough to start really investing themselves. People listening, I'm sure they've been intrigued, like, wow, Annette has so much value to offer and they are crushing it. Where can I find out more about what Annette's doing? Where can I follow along and maybe start doing push-ups myself every morning? How do I contact Annette? Annette, I'll leave your contact info in the description below. For sure. But where's the go-to places that people should reach out to you?
I'm mostly on Instagram. It's like my go-to place for sure. I'm often like chatting it up on my stories and Facebook as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to inspire other parents, moms, women out there by not only providing practical tips and advice, but also by showing people that it's possible. I want to personally thank you. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know other people out there got value from this episode.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you're interested in learning how to build a generational wealth, and I know you are, then you don't want to miss the episode where I interview Richard Canfield, where we dive into becoming your own banker while investing in real estate. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.